when a murder is discovered.
When they took Sadie out of the water with a rock tied to her foot with a pillowcase and no top and wearing only panties, I mean, you can't unsee that. And I watched some officers crying that day.
It doesn't just destroy one life.
I truly thought, okay, this cannot happen. This is an entire family. You're talking grandmother, mother, kids, 3 generations.
It tears communities apart.
When her body was located, she was nude, she was deceased, she had some ligature marks on her neck.
It's up to the police to not only solve the mystery.
I then went round the house looking for anything that might obviously be stolen.
And track down the killer, but bring them to justice.
There's 2 bodies found. Your first thought is, oh my goodness me, is there a serial killer?
In this episode, fishermen find male body parts floating in a suitcase, leaving police baffled.
The body was drained of blood before being dismembered, so that was a challenge for forensics.
Meet the murder detectives.
When I actually picked up that lockbox and I moved it back and forth, I was like, there's the gun.
Who reveal how they caught the killer.
His killer was meticulous and his killer was careful.
In September 2004, New Jersey prosecutor Patty Prezioso took on an unusual case.
When this investigation came in, it was a strange set of circumstances because a New Jersey resident had been identified as the victim of a homicide in Virginia Beach. My first thoughts about the case was, wow, this looks like, someone went through a lot of trouble to kill this man.
Five months earlier, on May 5th, near the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, some 300 miles away, a suitcase had been spotted in the water by 2 fishermen.
They pivoted their boat around and brought the suitcase on board and opened the suitcase, and the suitcase contained from the knees down of a white male.
Over the next 2 weeks, 2 more suitcases turned up containing the rest of the body, wrapped in black garbage bags.
Upon examination, it seemed clear that he had been shot, and the belief is he was shot and killed before he was disarticulated.
The body parts were found in Virginia.
Police computer forensics analyst Jennifer Seymour soon found herself drawn into the investigation.
So it didn't become immediately apparent to us that it was a victim from New Jersey. There was no missing persons report filed, and it took a while for them to identify even who the body was.
By circulating a composite sketch, Virginia State Police eventually identified the victim as 39-year-old Bill McGuire, a resident of Woodbridge, New Jersey. Realizing the investigation was now shifting across state lines, Virginia Police handed it over.
It was clear, looking at the case from the beginning, that we were going to need resources statewide, which the New Jersey Attorney General had, as did the New Jersey State Police. So those were the agencies that led the effort.
McGuire had fallen victim to a determined killer.
There was a lot of skill put into cutting the body up.
Police Lieutenant John Pizzuro led the hunt for evidence in New Jersey.
From a psychological standpoint, someone that does that usually pays attention to great detail. It just shows me that someone that takes a lot of time and that's very meticulous and that's very fastidious will go to greater lengths. They're not sloppy.
What we know from research is that dismembering bodies is rare. About 5 to 6% of murder cases from research show that bodies are dismembered. It's not easy to cut up a body. It takes time, it takes strength, it takes effort, and it's very, very grisly and messy. To be able to do that, to have the stomach to do that, to have the personality to be able to do that, describes a particular type of person.
Because it was so unusual, the case quickly caught the eye of a local reporter, Ken Serrano.
I was in the newsroom, of course, and the wire services had written a story out of Virginia on the fact that the body was found in 3 suitcases. I said to myself, this is going to be a big story and a long story. And I was right. The details were so incredibly lurid right up from the start that I think anyone in the country who had heard about this was shocked by it. The fact that it was in New Jersey brought it closer to home for most people.
Now she had a name. Prezioso needed to find out what had gone on in Bill McGuire's life to lead it to such an end.
Bill McGuire was married to a woman named Melanie. He had served in the Navy, and from what I've heard, he overwhelmingly was a very loving father, very devoted to his children. On the last day we knew him to be alive, he had closed on a house in Warren County, a substantial house, and they were planning on moving from a 2-bedroom, 2-bath duplex apartment in Woodbridge to this beautiful home in Warren County. All we knew going into the case was that the family seemed like a normal family.
Whenever a person is found murdered, the police immediately will look at people known to that, because most people are killed by somebody they know. So immediately you would look at, are they married? What was the state of their marriage? Was he in any financial difficulty? What's going on? It's building up a profile of the victim. Once you understand what's happening in the victim's life, you can understand who the potential suspects are.
Continuing to cover this breaking story, reporters began chasing down their own leads on the couple.
So the McGuires were on the cusp of realizing the American dream. They were both very hardworking people. Bill had been a waiter at a French restaurant at one point, and he had a certain rapport with the customers there. He was jocularly rude to them, come on, speed it up here, And they came to call him the rude waiter. Everybody wanted to be served by the rude waiter. He had gone to school at New Jersey Institute of Technology and eventually got a job there, $65,000 a year technology job there. Melanie McGuire was a highly regarded fertility nurse, known for her compassion and for her dedication. Some of her patients would call her the mother whisperer. She did not grow up with great affluence. She really got ahead in life with her own grit and determination. She went to nursing school to become a nurse and went into a very lucrative part of the business after getting out.
But when Virginia police broke the news of Bill's death to Melanie, her reaction was strange.
The Virginia Beach detectives came up to New Jersey the very beginning of June, and it was on approximately June 2nd that they met and took a statement from Melanie at her attorney's office. It wasn't much of a statement. They weren't allowed to ask many questions.
She was shaken. She was nervous, she was evasive, she was trying to cry but producing no tears. Most importantly, she didn't even ask how Bill McGuire was murdered. All those things raised the suspicions of the investigators.
Coupled with what we consider to be odd behavior, she never reported her husband as missing. Melanie had just moved out of her apartment, the apartment that she lived in with Bill and their children, just a few days before. Additionally, we learned she gave away Bill's belongings in black garbage bags. We wondered, why did she do this?
For John Pizzuro, there was something about the grieving widow that just didn't add up.
Her clothes were conservative. She was very quiet. She appeared very timid. She appeared very emotional when things would occur. And the interesting thing was that no matter how much she was dressed up and she acted demure, that her voice and her tone belied her appearance.
And then, reporters discovered something shocking about the state of Bill and Melanie's marriage.
One of the things we found out was that she filed for divorce a day or two after he went missing. When the divorce papers were found, that's when the story really got broken open. That's when things really got intense.
New Jersey State Police were investigating the murder and dismemberment of Bill McGuire. And the public wanted answers.
One of the things they had to contend with was the fact that there was still a killer out there. I mean, the mere fact that a man was found in 3 suitcases was just brutally alarming to people. So there was a lot of pressure on the authorities to come up with facts in this case.
The spotlight was beginning to focus on Bill's widow, Melanie. She had filed for divorce shortly after Bill had gone missing.
She was at a courthouse telling a judge that she was afraid of her husband and that she needed a restraining order. She was alleging that on the night after the closing, she and Bill had a fight, and he took a dryer sheet and shoved it in her mouth and got physical with her and said, "You're the reason that the kids are never going to have a father." And he left. And we had the audio tape from that hearing, and you could hear the judge saying, "Don't worry, Mrs. McGuire, you're safe now."
As a crime reporter, the fact that she had filed for divorce a couple of days later was something to really pay attention to, and was casting a lot of suspicion on Melanie McGuire. But she was still not the kind of person the public would immediately identify as a cold-blooded killer.
The fight and marital breakdown suggested Melanie might have a motive, but she'd hired a lawyer and wasn't cooperating. Prezioso needed something to jumpstart the investigation.
We had probable cause to get a wiretap, and we started listening to Melanie's phones. A wiretap is done in secret. The people don't know that they're on the wire, that they're being recorded. And it's carefully done under careful supervision of the court.
At that time, I was in charge of the wiretap portion of this investigation, meaning I got to listen to every phone conversations that she had during that wiretap portion.
Police Lieutenant John Pizzuro had had experience of running wiretaps in organised crime cases.
Wiretaps are very manpower intensive. It takes a lot of resources because you're sitting there listening. And what you're doing is you're getting a snapshot into someone's life. I'm listening to tone of voice, voice inflections. A lot of people communicate a little differently, but sometimes it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. And the tone sometimes tells us the truth, even though when the words don't.
The electronic surveillance quickly revealed something sensational.
We learned during the course of the investigation that the defendant had been having a relationship with one of her work colleagues, Dr. Bradley Miller.
He bought her lunch one day, and that had a huge impact on her. And they worked closely together for some of their patients.
I believe her affair started initially when she was 38 weeks pregnant with her second child. So normally people have affairs all the time, but I haven't seen too many cases where it starts when you're that pregnant.
She was in an office with Bradley Miller. He started massaging her back. Here's a woman who is very pregnant. And that bit of affection turned into, well, you can imagine.
Police soon persuaded the doctor to cooperate in secret with the investigation.
Bradley Miller wasn't hard to recruit, especially when we showed up at his doorstep and we spoke to his wife. Ultimately, people that cooperate have a lot to lose. I mean, when you're talking about a marriage and you're talking about a practice, and you're talking about your doctor's license, there is a lot of motivation for him to cooperate.
Melanie's phone calls with Miller revealed strange goings-on in the hours following Bill's disappearance.
Bill McGuire's car was recovered in Atlantic City. One of the most popular New Jersey media outlets, they had an article that said the security footage from the hotel captured the image of the person who parked the car. So after that article, what she told Brad Miller was that it was going to be her on the tape because it was her that parked Bill's car at the Flamingo Hotel.
Melanie McGuire told Bradley Miller that she had driven down to Atlantic City to find Bill's car, found it at the Taj Mahal, and moved it to the Flamingo Hotel to get back at him. Then, she said, she was tired, so she took a cab to Woodbridge, which is 103 miles away, got some sleep, and returned with another cab to get her car.
Now, Atlantic City is huge, and at the large casinos, most of them have parking decks that are so tremendously large that even if somebody is trying to remember where they parked their car, it's challenging. So the idea that she went to Atlantic City, not knowing where he was, and just happened to find his car and move it to the Flamingo Hotel is ludicrous.
Atlantic City wasn't Melanie's only destination in the nights following Bill's disappearance.
In a captured call with Dr. Miller, Melanie explained that in the early morning hours of May 4th, 2004, that she was in Delaware furniture shopping. I've lived in New Jersey for a long time. I never heard of anything about furniture shopping in Delaware being a thing, but perhaps it is.
Melanie's toll transponder pinpointed her just after midnight on a route that leads through Delaware to Chesapeake Bay.
For some reason, Melanie thought we knew that she was on the Delaware Memorial Bridge that morning, but it just does not seem like an opportune time to go furniture shopping.
The first suitcase containing Bill's legs was found in the waters of the bay the day after Melanie had been on the bridge. So far, police had focused solely on Melanie, but her odd behaviour and conflicting accounts of her movements were not in themselves proof of guilt.
At that time, we only had circumstantial evidence. We had a lot of circumstantial evidence, but we were still looking for that direct evidence or that smoking gun, if you will.
it was time to up the ante.
One of the things that I've noticed very early on is that during wiretap, stress impacts people differently. So if I wiretapped your phone and I interviewed your best friend, I know from a human nature standpoint is that the stress is gonna cause you to talk to that individual. In my experience, the people that we don't catch are the people that commit a crime with no witnesses and then don't talk about it. But human nature, we know people cannot help to talk about it. So what we're doing is we're capitalizing on human nature and what people actually do.
The detective started planting information with Melanie's friends and family in the hope it would trigger a phone call. They wanted to see what Melanie's reaction would be.
2 days before Bill went missing, Melanie McGuire purchased a gun in Pennsylvania. And we would later hear in a call with Jim Finn where he said, "You never told me you bought the gun." And she said, "Yeah, I bought it. I bought it for Bill."
Young nurse and mother of two, Melanie McGuire, was the unlikely prime suspect in the murder and dismemberment of her husband, Bill.
Melanie became a suspect after some very significant evidence was recovered.
A wiretap had caught Melanie talking with a friend named Jim Finn about buying a gun.
James Finn was a nursing school classmate of Melanie McGuire's and a gun enthusiast. They had a friendship, but it became pretty clear along the way that James Finn was romantically interested in Melanie McGuire.
From that conversation, we learned that 2 days before Bill went missing, Melanie McGuire purchased a gun in Pennsylvania using an identification that had a false address for her on it, purporting to make her a Pennsylvania resident. The reason that's important is in Pennsylvania back in 2004 when she purchased it with valid identification, she was able to go into a gun shop and leave with the weapon, which is precisely what she did.
Gun records showed that Melanie had used an old driver's license with her aunt's address on it to make the purchase.
She bought a Taurus handgun, 38 caliber handgun, and she purchased one other thing at the gun shop, which was wad cutter bullets, which is what the projectiles were that were recovered from the deceased.
Wad cutter bullets are distinctive for their flat tips. They have less recoil and are used primarily for target practice.
It's something that someone without knowledge of guns would have picked up inadvertently. The fact that she bought wad cutter bullets and wad cutter bullets were found among the remains was pretty damning.
On the wiretap, Melanie made what sounded like an admission of guilt.
Jim Finn said, "You never told me you bought the gun." And she said, "Yeah, I bought it for Bill."
For a moment, police held their breath, but it turned out Melanie had meant something else.
She said that she bought the gun for Bill because they were moving to a rural area and he wanted a gun.
Whatever her explanation to James Finn, Melanie had lied to buy the gun.
She could have gotten the gun in New Jersey and bought it legally. So there was no reason for her to do what she did unless she wanted to hide what she was purchasing.
Coming on top of her generally suspicious behaviour, police decided they had enough to act.
And this is where we conducted a search warrant for Melanie McGuire. This is also where I followed her from the day of the arrest.
Lieutenant Pizzuro was tasked with bringing Melanie in on a charge of first-degree murder. By now, she had moved into a new house 40 miles south of Woodbridge in the town of Brick.
This is what you would see in a regular residential neighborhood in America. But what you don't realize is that in a neighborhood like this, that your next door neighbor could be a murderer.
Melanie's daily routine included dropping her children at daycare on her way to work.
We wanted to make sure her children were in a safe environment where they weren't traumatized by their mother being arrested. So my job was to follow her on her way up to the daycare.
En route, things took an unexpected turn.
She stopped at a cannoli shop in Tom's River in Brick, right around here. And once she got out of the car, I had to get out of the car myself to make sure that her children were safe. And then I had walked up to the door right behind her just to act natural, and then she had grabbed my arm and she said, "Oh, this is great, maybe they'll open earlier since there are two of us standing out here."
Pizzuro had to tell Melanie she wasn't going to get her cannoli that day.
But afterwards, once that was done and the arrest occurred, I got her key and came here and executed a court-authorized search warrants for her premises.
When news of the arrest broke, the media went into overdrive.
It was difficult for the public to wrap their minds around how a respected fertility nurse could have possibly killed her husband and dissected his body. The fact that she was a compassionate person in her professional role did lead to some sympathy among the public for her, a certain amount of sympathy.
She had a lot of patients who were very friendly with her and believed in her innocence. So there was a web page created in her defense, and there were people who really thought that she didn't do it.
Melanie soon made bail of $750,000. Meanwhile, the arrest gave police a chance to dig more deeply into her life.
This scene is like any other scene that we have. We do search warrants all the time. The only thing that struck me here is the lack of disorganization. It was so organized that I believe that it just spoke volumes.
As he went through the house, Pizzuro finally got an inside view of the type of person Melanie was.
When I walk into the front door here, the front door, we're walking in, they have a garage, there's a downstairs, but there was no dust, for example. There was no dust bunnies. The spice rack was in alphabetical order. The bedrooms, for example, were very pristine. Everything was completely in order. This even from their closet, from their tags, from going from smaller size to larger size. So there was great detail, and what occurred to me is that Melanie McGuire is someone that really is into detail.
The house itself didn't turn up anything concrete, but Pizzuro wasn't done searching.
We found that Melanie McGuire had a storage facility in her name and that she had visited that storage facility. So once we found that, we conducted a search warrant on that storage facility. It was just your normal storage facility that you would see. If you watch a TV show, Storage Wars, you know, you go in there, you see one of those little lockers. That's it, that's all it was, and it's just a locker.
Pizzuro took his time searching the space.
My process when I do any search warrant is just being systematic. So I start at the left, go all the way to the back, go through the end, and then go all the way to the right. This way I don't miss anything. One of the things that we found was Mr. McGuire's wallet. If you were going to Atlantic City, are you going to go there without your wallet? Then why is your wallet in the storage facility?
Pizzuro felt he was onto something. Then, he seemed to strike gold.
So we found a gun box, lockbox. When I actually picked up that lockbox and I moved it back and forth, I was like, there's the gun. until the locksmith came and opened it, and it was Energizer D batteries.
It was a bitter blow.
The batteries in the gun lockbox really kind of threw me.
Melanie's desktop computer found its way into the hands of computer forensics analyst Jennifer Seymour.
It was a Friday, and later in the day, I was one of the few people around, and the lieutenant said, "Hey, we have someone coming in with a computer. It's for a homicide case. Are you going to be here to check the evidence in?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll be here."
Seymour is a specialist in digging out data that the user thought they'd deleted or didn't even know existed.
Computer forensics begins with removing the hard drive from the actual computer and creating a forensic image, which means we copy every bit and byte from the beginning to the end of the drive, including all the operating system files, stored files and photos, internet artifacts, and deleted hidden information. And then we use specialized software tools to be able to search, review, and find information related to our investigations.
Seymour focused first on Melanie's internet browsing history.
You can almost tell what someone's thinking by looking at what they're searching on the internet for. So we just wanted to kind of take a look at the digital evidence and see if there was anything that could tie together other pieces of evidence. And I started to find things like how to commit murder. There was a search for how to buy a gun in Pennsylvania, and a search for chloral hydrate, which is a sedative. So the information I found wasn't deleted, but it wasn't anything saved by the user. It's more likely something the user doesn't even know is being generated behind the scenes.
Police began theorizing that Melanie had sedated Bill before shooting him.
After we saw the computer searches, we were able to hone in on, what is chloral hydrate? And chloral hydrate is a sedative. There's a very old-time term called a Mickey fin, slipping someone a Mickey. That's putting chloral hydrate in alcohol. Now, what's significant about that is there was a syringe that was found in the glove compartment of Bill's car. And inside the car, on the passenger side, there was a vial of what was later learned to be chloral hydrate.
Things didn't look good for Melanie Maguire.
The detectives, more and more, it seemed like every person they talked to, every piece of evidence we had, the evidence was piling up against Melanie. It started to look like all of our findings thus far were really pointing in one direction.
But then, out of the blue, detectives received an anonymous letter containing a sensational allegation.
It said that Billy Maguire owed some very dangerous people money. So there was a claim that he wanted to buy a gun to protect himself because he owed someone money from a gambling debt.
If what the letter said was true, then maybe Melanie Maguire was innocent after all. Prosecutors had indicted Melanie Maguire for what the press was calling the Suitcase murder. But an anonymous letter threw doubt on the case. It alleged that husband Bill had been murdered over money.
Well, there was a rumor that William Maguire was a gambler and that he had gotten in trouble over gambling debts.
But despite Bill's car being found in Atlantic City, detectives were skeptical.
Having investigated organized crime extensively and gambling investigations, I know just from my experiences, there's going to be ledgers. We found no ledgers. There's going to be gambling sheets. There was no gambling sheets. We found no evidence whatsoever that Mr. McGuire was involved in gambling.
The idea that Bill had fallen foul of the mob in Atlantic City didn't seem to fit their MO.
Usually, they're not going to murder someone for gambling debts because then they're not going to get their money.
Melanie, meanwhile, seemed to have had a much stronger motive.
Melanie McGuire, the fact that she was having an affair with a man, she wants to divorce her husband but doesn't want to pay for it. And then she alleges domestic abuse. So she wanted rid of him, but she didn't want to go through the expense and the fighting that would have been involved. She just wanted him gone from her life.
Police refocused their attention on Melanie McGuire. By now, the team had amassed a body of circumstantial evidence. There were the conversations on the wiretaps.
Very early on in the course of wiretapping these phone calls, they learned about this relationship Melanie McGuire was having with Bradley Miller.
The suspicious internet searches.
I've looked at a lot of computers. I've even looked at other computers for other murder cases, and none of them ever had a search for how to commit murder.
And toll charges that placed her on the road to the area where the body was found.
Later that day, she called E10 and she asked that 2 charges be removed from her E10. And they said, no, your transponder was in that toll gate. We're not taking them off.
The most damning evidence of all, Melanie's purchase of a gun and the same kind of bullets found in the body.
The gun shop owner said that he remembered her specifically because he'd never sold a gun to a nurse.
But the prosecution still needed something to put the verdict beyond doubt. Patty Prezioso reviewed her notes, trying to see if Melanie had made a slip-up.
When Virginia Beach came up and did their preliminary work at the very beginning of June 2004, when they found out she had moved out of the apartment and given away Bill's things, they traced it to the person that she had given the things to, and thankfully Bill's clothing and belongings were still in those trash bags.
Bill's body parts had also been wrapped in black garbage bags. What if they matched?
We had a chemical analysis done by an expert. He did 4 different tests on them and was able to say that the bags, the materials that are in them, would have been made basically from the same box of recycled polyethylene, which means they were manufactured very close in time.
Prezioso needed to prove the bags had come from the same roll.
We had to learn about how garbage bags are manufactured. And basically, there's what looks like a metal pot that melts these pellets, and air is blown up, and the air causes the plastic to go up in like a plastic cylinder, and it's cut into bags. Because it's metal on plastic, there's markings. Physically looking at the bags, you could see striations in the bags, and on comparison, the trash bags that Melanie McGuire used to give away her husband's belongings matched the trash bags that the body parts were in the suitcases.
Prezioso was ready. On March 5th, 2007, the case finally came to court.
When the trial began in 2007, people were calling it the trial of the century. It had infidelity, it had sex, there was a doctor, there was a nurse involved. There was the incredibly gruesome murder of Bill McGuire and the desecration of his remains. And those are details that the public easily fixates on. But also there was these two impressions of Melanie McGuire that came out of the trial that also spurred the public's interest in that case. How could someone so compassionate do this?
There was so many distractions in that courtroom. Every day the gallery was filled, was standing room only with a line out the door, and there were the cameras. But my plan going in was just to focus on the jury and to make sure that they got to hear and see the evidence.
Dozens of witnesses were called, including Melanie's now former lover, her friends, and work colleagues.
We had 60 witnesses for the state. We had 2 people who wore a body wire who were still friends with Melanie, and they were trying to get her to say something incriminating on the wire.
One piece of testimony caused a stir.
There was a witness who was a friend of Melanie's who said that she stopped by the house to check on Melanie. It was a few days or a week after the murder would have happened. And she said when she got up to the front door of the house, she smelled bleach, a heavy smell of bleach. And beyond anything you would normally use to clean a house, more like if you were cleaning up a crime scene.
Despite all the compelling witness testimony, it was Melanie herself who made the biggest impact on the court.
The most important evidence at trial was Melanie's numerous excuses, and the jury got to hear her explain those excuses in her own voice, which was very important because witnesses can be cross-examined, and Melanie certainly had a wonderful attorney who was a great cross-examiner. But it was very difficult for him to cross-examine recorded calls with his client.
On April 23rd, almost 3 years after Bill's disappearance, Melanie was found guilty of first-degree murder, desecration of human remains, and perjury.
Melanie McGuire, I think, is a master manipulator. Obviously, she was able to get Bradley Miller to have an affair with her. She was able to get Jim Finn to stay close. She had a unique ability to spin the story for her way to get other people to do the things that she wanted to do. It just didn't work for Bill McGuire.
I think when people have limited knowledge of someone's life, they have a good experience with them, then they can't believe that allegations like this could be possible. But everyone related to this trial on the state side, we got to see Melanie's life inside and out. We had a very different picture of Melanie McGuire than her patients did. And not everyone is as they appear.
We're still talking about this murder 16 years after it happened. Part of the reason for that, I think, is that it was a circumstantial case. There was an element of mystery, and I think that element of mystery, even though the evidence against Melanie McGuire was overwhelming, that element of mystery continues to fascinate the public.
I have to say that I think if Melanie was a man, I don't know that we would be seeing the same interest. And yet the whole, I'm a small person, I couldn't have done this, it seems to still carry on today. I think that this defendant is manipulative. I have no doubt that the correct killer is in jail and that justice was done.